Hello and welcome back to AC's Make and Repair. In this video I'd like to show you how I made this belt sander stand. This stand is not only able to be set at 90 degrees, it's fully adjustable right back to over 45 degrees. Very handy in a lot of applications. I made this one to suit a Makita, but with the idea of how I made mine, some of you people out there might be able to get an idea how you could make your own. You could make a rigid one to suit just 90 degrees if you wanted to. Come along with me and I'll show you how I did it. Those that are interested, this is the veggie garden. Lettuces and zucchinis up that end. This is a progress report. Silver beet's going crazy there. There's some more lettuces down this end. Up the middle here, we've got a heap of dwarf beans. And over that edge there, some tomatoes. See if I can zoom in. Yeah, some tomatoes are growing up there. Got potatoes just starting to stick their head through here in that row. And over further there, we've got some cabbage. It's coming along all right. There's more stuff growing up further. I don't know what that is, but I'll try to keep you updated on it. So here's a photo of the completed sander in its frame. First thing we're going to do, and I'm going to show you how to cut out, is these sides. So I had to make a template up to do this. Of course I had to mark for the switch, etc. and things like that. So I marked the template out to the surrounding because I want to clamp it to the handle. The handle runs parallel with the belt itself. So I've got a piece of cardboard and I started marking it out with this piece of cardboard so it straddles the handle itself. I'm going to make the two sides in such a way that I can pivot the sander. So I'll fast forward through this process, just showing you the main points. For your belt sander it may be different. This is a Makita. You might have some other brand that you will have to make to suit your sander. But generally most belt sanders can be clamped using the original handle. You might, if you can find a rigid bolt hole somewhere that you can use, that's great. Sometimes there's a knob on the front of the belt sander that you can, with a 10mm bolt that goes in behind it, you can actually use that to facilitate the clamping of your sander down. Now I want to make mine pivotable, so I had to put that into my planning when I did it. If you just want to make it so it's square and the table that you rest things on is square to the belt, you might be able to use one piece of ply all the way around to hold your table, everything on. There's many ways to mount these, but this is the way I did mine. I'll fast forward through it, like I said, and show you how I did it. So I ended up with a shape like this, and which fitted tightly around the housing of my sander. I put the two pieces of ply for the sides together that I'd cut two blanks out on, as you can see, and I screwed through even my cardboard template. I screwed both pieces together, so it was nice and firm together. Initially, on the left of your screen there, you'll see where I've incorporated the little hole for the front handle to go through. I do change that later to suit, because it's too difficult to cut that through the plywood, so it fits nice and snug. So I ended up deleting that out of it, but I put these two together and marked it all out and went and cut it on the bandsaw. Now you could cut this out with a jigsaw if you haven't got a bandsaw, or even a scroll saw you could use to cut the sides out if you needed to. I then gave it a quick sand on the external corners and internal corners just to make it nice and smooth. I did with much trouble cut the hole in the front of the ply for that front handle, but the handle was tapered. It was too much trouble, so I got rid of it and cut that out, as you can see there, and it fitted nice and tight and still held it, the sander, nice and tight. I screwed the two pieces together to hold it nice and tight, so they came out exactly the same, and they fitted on really good and it held tight. In this next stage I added a pine spine and I curved it to suit the top of my sander, as you can see. Sorry about going out of the frame there. And it's the same thickness as the handle itself. So I put the two pieces together, as you can see, like that, and screwed through so that it held them nice and true, and then I cut that to shape. I then mark a bolt hole, and I drill the two sides to facilitate a bolt to clamp the handle itself. As you can see, I've drilled the two holes, put the bolt through, and it pulls it tight enough on the handle to hold the two pieces nice and firm. Look, it's nice and firm, believe it or not, even though they look like they're flopping around. When you screw it all together without that bolt, it is fairly firm, but with the bolt, it just takes it to another level and holds it nice and tight. Here you see me assembling it all, clamping it all together, and then screwing it all together. And that makes the main clamp. That's the worst part out of the road, believe it or not, to make something to suit the shape of your wool sander. And it's nice and rigid and firm, and it does the job really well. I left them two curves at the back near my thumb there for an adjustment point so I can hold the angle with it. I'll probably make the pivot point down the bottom. As you can see, I put a little strengthener in there on the corner. That's where I will make the pivot point. So I drill the hole. I'm going to put a 12mm bolt through. I'll make sure there's enough parallel surface on the bolt. Some bolts step down where the thread is or step out where the thread is. This one, this 12mm bolt, it's parallel all the way along, even through the thread. So make sure it's long enough to go through my two rails, which are going to be these two rails. These are about 70mm by about 30mm. And this is going to be the base that holds it, holds the whole frame and the rest as well. I clamp the boards together to drill them. As you can see, I've made it a nice firm fit, and look, it helps hold it nice and square and secure when you finally get it back together. As you can see, I've added a block at the end of those two boards to keep it parallel. Now I'm going to go on to make the baseboard that holds it and mounts it down. This is a photo of that baseboard. You can see I've added a roughly 65mm block in there by 65mm. This will be clamped into a vise. You could also leave that off and clamp it to the top of a bench, or make it to screw down to a bench. I'll fast forward through that making process, and I do screw it to that frame as well, as you'll see. Now I'm going to go on to mounting the rest. I'm going to use a bit of form ply here. The reason I'm going to use form ply, this is 18mm thick, it's nice and rigid, but it's got that glossy finish on it. So I figured that might be better for a rest or a table if we want to slide things sideways on it too. It's a nice smooth finish. So I'll show you how I mounted that too. So I had these pieces of thick plywood. These were blocks from underneath a pallet that I picked up from somewhere. They were the blocks that held the top piece of the pallet from the bottom piece. They were the spacers. They're perfect for this. They set the right height so it hits the bottom of the belt on the flat pad side of the belt. And it's perfect height, nice and rigid, nice and strong. I'm going to glue them together. I'm going to drill a hole through the middle of them and counterbore the bolt through, the bolt head down, so I could screw that to the top, the table to the top of that. I actually make them the width of the two rails, and I'll show you that process now. As you can see, I've counterbored the bolt. That way the head sits down below. I can screw the table straight to the top of that now. I've made it just so I can screw the table, so if I want to change the shape of the table or anything, I add these. These are the same gap width as the gap between the two rails. That holds this part nice and square to the frame. I actually mark out some hole spacings here. Screw them down, screw these onto the block. I make another one for the bottom of the rails and put it all together, and I'll show you that too, and the finished product too. So after adjusting everything and getting everything right so the table comes up nice and close to the belt, I get to the point where I mark centre of the tabletop and centre of the post that holds it, and I screw this tabletop to that post below it. You will have to do a lot of this on the run if you're deciding to make one. You'll have to make it as you go. Like I had to do this one as I went. I've never done one of these particular belt centers before. I've done other belt centers with mounts, but never one like this, so I had to make it to suit. I wanted overhang, so if I wanted to lay the table, the belt center backwards, the table would overhang the belt a bit. Mostly I'll be laying the belt towards the table, so it's not a problem. So I've got a little bit of overhang, probably about 30mm overhang, just in case I want to lay the belt back at any point in time for a different type of angle cut. So after laying it all out, I lay it on the table, so the back edge and everything is nice and square, and then I go through and I screw that top on. Did you notice that? I put the washer on the wrong side. I put a wing nut on this other side, but I do take it off again and fix that and put the washer on the right side. Just wasn't thinking as I did it. The next thing I made was an adjustment lock. This was just a piece of curved plywood with a slot routed up the centre of it. I had to sort of put it here. If I'd moved it further forward, I think it would have worked better as a stop. However, I use the same fulcrum. It does work. It does lock it off, but not super strong. But it's enough for what I'd use it for. The main fulcrum bolt, which I don't endeavour to use this thing every day of the week, so I think just doing the main fulcrum bolt up, where it hinges in the bottom there, more than locks it tight. However, this I'm going to put a bolt through here with a wing nut on it, and this is just a backup. If any force goes up against it, it will stay still. You may have noticed I had to block this out so it run parallel, and also the other side, so the part where my thumb is on now, the other side of those, that one I had to cut off. I didn't need it. I only decided to put a lock on this side. So here's the finished product in action. This is at 90 degrees. It's good for the sandy flats at 90 degrees. It's also good for doing curves. I'll do a curve in a second and you'll see that too. So if you cut something out and you want to sand it back to a line, it works well for doing that. One of the main reasons I made this was for the tilting function, and sometimes you want to put a bevel on something and you want it nice and uniform, and you haven't got a router bit that can do that, but you can lean something like this belt sander forward and put an angle on something. I'm just cleaning the belt out there with a little bit of foam. I find foam, if it's only light dust that's clogging the belt, works really good. Here I'll put it over an angle. Now I'm going to put the offcut off that curve that I just did there on the table. I'll clamp it down, and I'll show you how you can even do a bevel on the front edge using this method on for a curve, and you'll see that now. And it does a good job. The other thing you could actually use this to do even some sort of knife blade. If you made up a template, leaned your belt forward on an angle, the angle that you desired, say 12 or 13 degrees, whatever you want, up to 30 degrees. This one here goes to about 45 degrees, so it's more than capable of going anywhere between 90 degrees backwards, and it's fine. You may notice I've left it a bit firm, that hinge bolt, because I want it firm. However, in the future I might end up making up a big wing nut for there that I can just tighten up after I've moved it, just to make it easier to move and locate. I've just got a mark down on the side there that shows me where 90 degrees is, and that works fine too. I might put some little marks on the side there when I set up the increments with a protractor of some sort. Thanks for joining me as I made this belt sander stand. Hope it might be a help to some of you. And if it was, please hit the like button. That helps me get more views on my channel. It helps that channel along. If you've got any comments, please post them below. Share me with your friends. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.